Alright, hello everyone and welcome to NFL Discussion. I'm your host and NFL enthusiast Dougie Doug. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing Monday Night Football Week 7 of the 2023 NFL season. And in this game, we had the 49ers taking on the Vikings. And this was a game that probably the majority of people had the 49ers winning this game. Vikings have had a bit of a rough season. Played an ugly game last week against the Bears that don't have their top player, Justin Jefferson. Whereas the 49ers, well, they had a bad game themselves last week. They lost. Granted, yeah, they just didn't play well. Or no, they just didn't play well overall. They lost. So one team coming off an ugly win, one team coming off an ugly loss. Who was going to take the win here? Let's go ahead and get right into it. Spoiler alert, it was the Vikings. With that, we'll go ahead and get right into it. Starting with the 49ers. Brock Purdy completed 21 of 30 passes for 272 yards, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, adding 19 yards on 5 carries. 49ers have now dropped 2 games in a row after starting the season 5-0, falling to third in the NFC in the process. Purdy and the 49ers trailed for 4 times as long as they had during the first 6 weeks of the season against the Vikings, with a relative inability to get out the field defensively on third down and costly turnovers contributing to the slide. San Francisco will now try to regroup ahead of a Week 8 interconference showdown with the Bengals at Levi Stadium. Christian McCaffrey rushed 15 times for 45 yards and a touchdown, adding 51 yards and a touchdown on 3 receptions. McCaffrey set the NFL record for most consecutive games with a touchdown, including the playoffs, when scoring from 3 yards out in the second quarter. He would add a second score in the third quarter of a 35-yard catch and run to bring the 49ers to within 5 points of the Vikings. The offense would only add a field goal to fall short for the second week in a row. McCaffrey will look to continue to extend his record next week. George Kittle got 5 of 7 targets for 78 yards, adding 2 yards on his own carry. Kittle came on in the second half with the team playing from behind, showcasing strong hands, elite body positioning, and his classic yards after the catch ability on his way to lead a team in receiving for the second time this season. The 5-2 49ers have now dropped 2 straight, both games played mostly about Deebo Samuel, meaning they could have some work to do ahead of their Week 8 clash with the Bengals if they want a correct course on offense. So hopefully nobody's talking about a panic button in San Francisco. Yes, they've had a couple of bad games here. Purdy threw a couple picks, has now lost 2 straight. Good news, Christian McCaffrey is still scoring touchdowns, so at the very least you still got that. And you still have George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk in the passing game. Granted, Deebo Samuel's presence is missed, along with Trent Williams on the offensive line as well too. Vikings were able to get some pressure on Purdy, and I think that certainly had an impact on some of his decision making and led to some of the picks as well. But for San Francisco, it's still one of the top teams in the NFC. Let's not get it twisted, but clearly this is a rough stretch here, and how they bounce back, how they respond continues. Do they spiral some more and drop 3 straight, or do they get back on track next week? Either way, the 49ers hopefully get back on track next week, because Philadelphia coming off a good win against the Dolphins. They're in the top spot in the NFC, and they don't look to be slowing down. And the competition for second place is all over the place. So if San Francisco can get back on track, they can restake their claim to second place in the NFC. Vikings. Kirk Cousins completed 35 of 45 passes for 378 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Cousins was near perfect against one of the top all-around defenses in the league in primetime. Yes, in primetime. He leaned on his top 2 options for most of the night, completed 18 passes on 22 targets to rookie Jordan Addison and tight end T.J. Hawkinson, tossing both touchdowns to the electric first-year receiver. The highlight of the game came just 16 seconds before the half, when Addison wrestled the ball away from the defender on the third down for a 60-yard score to send the Vikings into the break with a 9-point lead. Vikings pulled into second in the NFC North with a win and get a matchup with the reeling Packers in Week 8. Alexander Madison rushed 8 times for 39 yards, adding 3 yards and 2 receptions, and Madison saw all of the work on the team's first 2 drives before ceding most of the remaining backfield opportunities that came outside the 5-yard line to Akers, notably getting stopped on 2 goal line carries as well. He was able to break free for a 19-yard run on the first play of the game, but managed just 23 yards on his other 9 touches for the remainder of the game. Conversations will likely be had about this week regarding the backfield depth situation ahead of Week 8. And Jordan Addison caught 7 or 10 targets for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. Addison managed 95 yards and 2 scores in the first half before leaving at the end of the third quarter with cramps. He would go on to add 2 more grabs to kick his career-high receiving total to 123 yards, leading the Vikings to the upset win over the 49ers in the process. Addison will now have a week to hydrate prior to week 8. So yes, in prime time, say what you will about Kirk Cousins. You can flash the Monday Night Football record all you want, but Kirk Cousins had himself a game. He showed out in prime time, and couldn't be more proud of my team and my quarterback for how they played. And Jordan Addison had himself a breakout game, and this is exactly what the Vikings, I think this is exactly what the Vikings were looking for here. He drafted this guy in the first round. He was supposed to be a compliment to Justin Jefferson in the passing game. Well, Jefferson's out. Addison, can you step up? The answer is yes, he can. And I talked about conversations being had about the running back depth chart. You look at the stats, and I mean, for either guy, Akers or Madison, they're not flashy stats, but the Vikings did trade for Akers because Madison hadn't been providing much of a spark in the running game. But then again, Minnesota's not really much of a run team, so I wouldn't expect the running game to be flashy. But I understood the trade for Akers, trying to bring in somebody else. Could it be that Akers is going to take on more reps, get more play? Could he take over the number 1 position? Maybe, maybe not. Right now, I still see Madison being RB1, but Akers could certainly be getting more snaps, maybe challenge for that RB1 spot. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of NFL Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.